Hi, hello everyone. I look a bit more excited today because last time I got complaints that I was looking too sleepy or it looked like I was half dead, which I was too much work. And so today I'm all chirpy, all not chirpy. Chirpy is a very bad word to use for me, especially with this face that I have. But I'm more excited, more pumped up, and yes, welcome to the second episode of Let's Be Frank. It has been great to shoot this episode with the guest that is Chirag Pugalia. So to tell you about Chirag, Chirag is the chief pun officer of Matar Media, and when I say Matar Media, it's his own startup that he started in Bangalore after he decided to drop out from college, and that's a very interesting story. You will hear about it after I'm done talking, of course. And he also is working on a very new concept, a very new project, and that is called street-o-preneurs. These street-o-preneurs are street vendors for who are entrepreneurs for Chirag because, and yes, they are in some sense or in all senses because they gather their own supplies, they turn their raw materials into finished products, they sell it, they earn profits or they earn losses. So it's an entire entrepreneurial process that goes on with them. So, other than that, we also talk about how's Bangalore, how's the situation in Bangalore. He gives you ideas about if you want to start your own startup or your own business, if you have to make hard choices like not continuing college, for one example. Uh, it's a great talk that I had with him, and he's full of ideas, and I hope that you will also get some ideas from him. And yes, there will be no me at the end of the video because I realize that no one reaches the end of the video, so I'll not keep one of the important parts, and that is the book recommendation for the end part. I recommended my experiments with truth in the previous episode, and in this episode, I have a very different book written by a very different person, but who was also close to Gandhiji. He's the poet from Bengal, the Nobel laureate who returned his Nobel Prize, the poet that every Bengali looks up to, or if the entire country and the world looks up to, and that is Rabindranath Tagore. And this is his book on nationalism. Tagore's nationalism was very different than Gandhi's nationalism or Patel's nationalism or Nehru's nationalism. It's a very small book. It also takes you through Japan and how Japanese nationalism can be a source of learning for us. It then goes into the nationalism in the West, the global North, that is. And yeah, it's a wonderful book that takes you through three different phases of nationalism, three different categories of nationalism, and tells you ki, how this is evident that nationalism in India has to be uh, worked out through a systematic process. It's a wonderful book. It's called Nationalism by Rabindranath Tagore. It's not. It's 99 rupees. So sasta hai, like our show. Very sasta show. Very sasta book recommendations, but very good book recommendations. Hope you enjoyed the episode that is going to come up onto your screens right now. Hi Chirag, how are you? And welcome to the
Second.
episode of Let's Be Frank with me, Viprajit Roy Chaudhary. And I hope you're doing wonderful in all the pandemic and all the situation that is around you. And before saying anything else, I would like to thank you for accepting our invitation, for giving us time. We know you have a schedule that you need to follow, and still being able to manage time and be a part of this interview series. I can't thank you enough, but I'm very grateful. So, before we begin, let's just break the ice and talk about how your life has been till now, or how you and all of your colleagues in your company are faring in this situation that this coronavirus has caused. So just give us an icebreaker, give us a brief into how are you and how's everything going in Bangalore.
So Bangalore is pretty chill in terms of the weather.
not in terms of how the conditions are right now, but it's growing. So I think since they started the interstate travel, I mean that's how I came back to Bangalore. So I am from Maharashtra. I live in Nagpur. My hometown is there. So right when
Okay.
the corona outbreak was like setting foots in the country, we went back to our hometown for a while, and then it became so that we weren't able to return back here. So and so did our entire team. So we were working from home, since most of our stuff can be done from home, which is video production, editing stuff. So that was going smooth, but then we had a few shoots and I had to come back to Bangalore. So when they started travel, I came back. I completed my quarantine and everything, and so yeah, we've been back on track. A few of our teammates are still stuck in their hometowns, so we're trying to coordinate uh, with whatever internet infrastructure and whatever we have. So, but
All
like
right.
our working style has always been work from home. Like since our offices have been our home, so it's not a drastic change in the work style that way. But yeah, things are a little difficult because the file storage infrastructure is and the networking sharing infrastructure is gone. That's become a little more challenging for us, but let's see. We're expecting this to be better soon.
Okay. Before we move on to other things, I'd just like, because we primarily, urban youth and the people of Assam, we primarily cater to the public or the audience that is situated here in Assam or in other parts of Northeast. So, for us to get an idea, and since you told us that you have experienced this pandemic and the lockdown and everything in two different states, be one being Karnataka and one being your own home state, Maharashtra. So, do you see any kind of differences in what is happening in Karnataka right now in terms of safety measures put in place, in terms of how people are reacting to it, in comparison to Maharashtra, where we know the cases are very high and it's increasing rapidly? So, on a very personal level, on a very non-technical level, do you feel that either of the state could have maybe done better or is doing something wrong, which is posing problems for people like you who are working day and night and depend on outdoor shoots and everything else that connects to it? So, could you just give us a very non-technical, a very personal level detail about both the states and how you fare them?
So I guess there's a difference in probably the mentality of people from the place where I come from, which is Nagpur, and Bangalore. Uh, Being it a metropolitan city and a tier two city, that is obvious there. But the way people are responding to the government um, lockdown policies or quarantine policies, I think that's different. But I think it's been enough of the lockdown, so people are getting restless, and in both the places I've seen that people are wanting to go out and wanting to get back to their normal lives. But somewhere I feel that the situation is just getting worse because of that. Because the problem is not with going out, but when you're going out, there are certain things that you have to ensure, right? So, which I see a total lack of in both the states, because like we've been having to go out for shoots for a few clients, and we are trying our best to keep everything sanitized, sterilized. All our equipment is sanitized. We sanitize regularly and we wear face masks and all of that is there. But when we're traveling in the cab, when we are around at that place, we don't see a lot of people following that. We don't see a lot of people following social distancing. So it just makes me think that whenever, and I guess I read it somewhere that we always used to curse the directors of horror films or horror movies when they showed the protagonist entering the basement where they know that the ghost is gonna be there and there is danger there, but they still go there, right? And when you relate that to the situation right now, you will stop making fun of those directors who showed it that way, because it is human nature to go into to put themselves into danger, and that's what I've
Of
been
course.
seeing around. So that is something that
True,
might be
true.
pushing us a little behind on the in the fight with this pandemic. But people are getting restless at both the places. It's only how safely can we do and resume back to our normal lives is the challenge.
I guess it's understood to a certain extent why people would get restless, because there are many people who depend on their livelihood, their daily work that they do to run their shows and run their households, and maybe some of them are just the single bread earners or breadwinners for that matter for their family. So we understand and even in Assam now there is a lockdown that has been imposed, which had become necessary due to the sudden rush of people onto the streets right after the lockdown was uplifted in although in a phased manner, but still the people rushed out of their homes and the cases suddenly took a outburst. But however, moving on from the pandemic and everything, let's talk about you. The In India, the culture of startups saw a sudden rise, if I must say, as to how many startups were coming up every year and how well they were doing in different sectors of the economy, and most of them were making their business very successful by partnering with government initiatives or with other bigger companies, and helping in them outsourcing whatever resources or whatever logistics they require. And you are also one such person who has been involved in this entire scenario of startups, which your startup, and I am to address the elephant in the room, it's called Matar Media. Now, that's a very unique name. That's not something which is common. I have for sure not met anyone who would have named their startup by the name of a vegetable, that too mutter. So take us through this journey of how you ended up in Bangalore, and then how you ended up with founding or rather co-founding Matar Media, and why do you term yourself as the chief pun officer? And that's also unique, as unique is the name of the company. And what does Matar Media do? And we'll dive into other sectors and other concepts that are related to Matar Media. But first, the curiosity is to know why Matar Media and how you ended up in Bangalore, how you led yourself to become the co-founder of Matar Media, and what's the journey been like?
So we actually came to Bangalore to pursue our undergrad in Christ University. So we were just experimenting in the university clubs and organizations, and I was really interested with the entire idea of making videos and making animations and stuff, and we were doing that. So I enrolled myself for a lot of clubs and organizations, and that is where I, for one of the projects under a club, I met Divyam, who's my partner right now, and we met in our first semester, I guess, for a project that we had to make a documentary for about street vendors or street entrepreneurs, and that is where for 2.5 years, the next 2.5 years, we completely dedicated to the cause of street vendors, and it was actually to finance that project that we again started a media company in, I think, our final year of college, so that we could take up a few media projects in Bangalore. We didn't have a big vision or a goal of anything that sort, but we were always enthusiastic about startup. And being in Bangalore, I think it's the startup hub, and the kind of opportunities
Of
that were
course.
there, the kind of discussions that happen around us, that in a way pushed us. And also coming from a Marwari family, entrepreneurship is somewhere there, I guess, in the way we're brought up,
It's in the
and
blood.
yeah, in the no, in the way we're brought up, the way our parenting is happening, it's always fed to us that we have to, that we end up choosing that path more often. And when an opportunity strikes in front of you where you feel that you can add certain value, I think we jumped on that opportunity. We started with very small projects here and there, and we saw the scalability of that, of whatever we were doing back then. So we were shooting videos for clients, and I think first of our clients was Commune, who was found by Roshan Abbas and Gaurav Kapoor. So we were doing videos for them in Bangalore, and when we started doing those, and we got approached by a few other brands and few other events that they also wanted us on board. So we were like very naive at that stage. We didn't know what to charge. We didn't know how to set up processes. We were very inefficient with everything. But I guess persisting to make those things better has pushed us ahead. And probably I think 4 to 5 months down that line, we realized that this is the kind of experiences that we had working outside of college, and the kind of learnings that we had gained, that convinced Divyam and I to in a way go full time into this. And so we both, like, I think in our last semester we dropped out of college, and there was a big project also on board, for which we had to give full time, which we had to devote our full time attention to. And time was becoming a really scarce resource, so we thought, let's save up the next 3-4 months and completely jump into this journey of entrepreneurship. So we did that, we took that call, and I think it's been a year from that day. I think we did that in June. So we started Matar Media in June
Okay.
last year, and it's been a year, and it's been 13 months, and the amount of learnings have been immense. So we've tried to systemize everything. We've made processes for the operational bit as well as for the ancillaries bit, and it's all been a self-learned thing. And there's been a lot of support in terms of infrastructure in Bangalore as a city. So I think and being around a lot of startups is definitely a push. So that's been about it in brief. I mean, there are a lot of stories which I could keep going on about, but that would deviate us from today's topic, I guess.
Okay. Uh, so what I could, infer from whatever you have shared with us right now is I believe the culture in your back at your house played a major part in you, having the confidence enough to choose to drop out, because dropping out is a major call. I mean, it's a big dilemma for many students whether to drop out and continue with your passion or what you like doing, or maybe complete your studies and then think about it. So I believe that all the viewers that are watching with us right now and hearing you speak will rather get a very clear idea of that when you are sure about what you want to do, that you have to take hard decisions and you have to trust yourself through the way, and at the end of the tunnel there will always be light, as they say. So of course, and that's a very inspiring story, and that's a story from where people like us, all the people that are watching right now will learn and will of course think about making these hard choices and being there for themselves and not doubting themselves. So thank you for sharing this story. So other than that, if you could also tell us that it has been more than a year and a month, I believe, that Matar Media started. So what has Matar Media been highly involved into? What kind of work does it do? Because I know there's another side to you, that is a social entrepreneur, and we'll come to that. But before that, to give a clear idea of how Matar Media has been performing till date, and what it has been doing, and what is the sectors that it touches every time it sets on any project, so that our viewers also get an idea about what work you basically do, what Matar Media is all about. So if you can just take us through that journey in very brief detail, and so it would be wonderful for our viewers to listen.
Yeah, so when we started Matar Media, we had a very vague idea of what so we started with all that we could do, not that we wanted to do. So we were doing digital marketing for brands, we were doing production work, we were doing graphic design and content related work. So as a whole, anything and everything that falls under marketing, we were trying to do all of that. Maybe I think 9 months doing that in that journey for 9 months when we were doing that, we realized that it was very important for us to focus down on certain things that were getting us the most value, and there were definitely a few things which required more attention that we weren't able to put to it because we were doing a lot of things at the same time, and we were trying to do everything best, right? So it was taking up our mental energy, mind space, as well as our physical energy, and it was draining us completely. So that is when we realized that production was one area which was a high margin area for us, which we felt really passionate about, and which our work that we had done in those 9 months was highly appreciated by all our clients. As apart from everything else that we were doing, so those were just like an ancillary services that we had put, but core was productions. And we realized and we took that call that we want to completely focus on this because we were deviating all those kinds of resources. And when you're a startup, you have very less of that. You work with a very restricted environment in terms of finance, in terms of the space, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of organizing your capacity to organize stuff, because you can only focus on certain things. So it's what we've learned through the process is that when you're starting up, you should go small. You should definitely dream big. You should definitely dream of getting there someday, but you have to take small baby steps to it. You can't just put everything on the plate altogether and then make a much bigger mess out of it. So that 9 month was the turning point probably, and after that we completely focused on productions. We had certain of our team members which who were into graphic design, content writing, client servicing. We kind of tried to get them placed at some other agencies or marketing agencies which were doing those things, and that's how we kind of made our team also very lean. So earlier we were working with a 15-member team who was doing all of this, but then we cut that down to 4 members, whom we
Okay.
felt were extremely necessary, and so we tried to make that into a leaner model after that. And since then, I think we've been doing really good. As in, that's what probably I feel internally. It's much more satisfying from before. So basically, what productions entails is, or has into it is anything and everything that has to do with the camera. So right now, for us, that is also a very big field or industry that we are into, and we want to go into more niched services after this. But that is where we are right now. So we do photography, videography for events, for weddings, and we help brands create a lot of content. So how the entire COVID scenario has made people value online content or videos a lot. So there we have seen a major drift that since people can't communicate, can't market a lot of their messages or their brand's messages offline, they all are trying to move to online. A major part of the Indian
Uh,
businesses who weren't ready to move to online as yet, now it's being as a push for those brands and for those small businesses as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity created in that sense for businesses like ours who are, or any marketing agencies who's into digital marketing. So, or online video content creation, or online content creation could be the word for it. So that has been an opportunity, and we're just trying to seize as much as possible of it, and also add value to the brands that we are working with. So in terms of the production quality, in terms of the content, in terms of creativity, how can we make that content stand out? Because if I mention that the need has increased for online content, uh, e- having said that, the competition or the content online has also increased. Now, if everybody is starting to put content online, it's very difficult to make your content stand out in that clutter,
Yeah.
or in that content bulk that is.
The opportunities become very less of what new to do.
So, in that sense, the challenges have also increased in terms of making your piece of content stand out, in terms of making your content go as small as possible, and even smaller if possible, to capture or to gather your audience to it. And I think that's the fun part of it as well, because those kinds of challenges also motivate you to get better at what you're doing, right? So that is, I think, that's made it more interesting in a way, and we're looking forward to it, how it takes shape. But we are going into it with, like, completely into it, and let's see how it goes.
All right. So, before we move on to your social entrepreneur side and the work that you have been doing on the ground level, quickly I would want to, because I have been curious about this till today, till this interview session. Why do you call yourself the chief pun officer and not something else, which is a more official corporate name, or So, what is the story behind being the chief pun officer or official of Matar Media?
So there's no story behind it, like a story. There's it's just been there that we don't want bureaucracy to be there in our startup. We want to completely eliminate that. So there's no CEOs, CTOs, CEOs, and all of that hierarchy that we want to establish from day one. And ours being a little creative company, a little young company, we want to keep the vibes a little not very corporate-ish, if I want to give that a word. So that is where we have given designations, or it's not we what we've given to people, it's what people have made designations for themselves here. So
Okay.
we have chief jugaad officer, we have chief pan officer, and so for different positions like that. And it's fun in a way to make
Of course, it's a break. It's an icebreaker.
yeah. So that's there, and I am known, or I'm infamous for cracking lame puns around in the office, and irritating everything out of people. So I guess that's the name that's given to me. So it's not
Oh,
something I've put to myself. It's been given to me by the team.
all right. So that's a wonderful, that's a wonderful message, or that's a wonderful idea to, just keep everything going casually and calmly with no such corporate and bureaucratic pressures with all these heavy names. And that also keeps the fun going. So I believe that's very important when you work. You have to also have fun while you're working, so that you never get tired of it. Okay, so that's a wonderful story. So now moving on to the other side of you. Now, as many of our viewers would not know, that you have been working very closely and on ground level with our street vendors, who are a very essential part of many workers, or many people who go to work every morning, from setting up these food stalls in the morning, breakfast stalls, and then these lunch stalls during lunch hours, or and turning it into maybe a juice center or a snack store. Or I'm just talking in terms of food, but there are other vendors also who work day and night, and they depend on these on their daily sales, on how much customer interaction they have. So before we move on to what your work has been with them, can you give us a brief insight into what motivated you? You have already told us that you went on to do a documentary with street vendors. So is that where you got hooked up with the idea of converting street vendors into the term that you've given them, street-o-preneurs? So, what is the story behind street-o-preneurs, and how do you uh, see them as one of the most essential parts of your work that you have done and the documentary that you have created? And why create a documentary on street vendors is a question that we all must have are very curious to know.
Yeah. So, as I told you before, in our first year of college, I joined this social club in the university, and there they announced that there was a competition run by another organization which wanted us to make a short documentary, a 3 to 4 minute, 5 minute, like a very brisk documentary about. Street vendors, or the topic itself was street entrepreneurs, and we literally got to thinking. So that is where Divyam and I were in the same team, and I was a management student, so I was doing BBA, and Divyam was a media studies student, so he was studying journalism and media, and so we both were working on that apart from a few other members as well. And what happened was when we went and spoke to those street vendors, right? There was one street vendor whom we were speaking to. So we had a general set of questions we were asking them, to get their background, to get what they feel, to understand how their um, everyday living is and what all they do. So one such day when we were having that conversation with one of those street vendors, we were speaking to him, and we asked him for an education, for his educational background, which was a general question in our questionnaire. And he spoke that he was, I think he just completed his BTech, or so he was an engineer, and still he was vending on the streets. He was selling mangoes, and that got I think me thinking that matlab that was a moment of truth for me, that you know and I thought of him that he's an engineer, and having had all of that knowledge or education, he's still doing his business, or the business of selling fruits, the way an uneducated person would be doing it. And I realized, and I just got to thinking, what if I, with all this undergrad degree and everything, would have to do street vending? Would I be doing it the same way, or would I be doing it 100 times differently, or 100 times better than what that was being done? And when I started thinking of that, when I started thinking of that mango business as my own business, I got, in a week's time, I actually had a 50 to 60 different things that I would want that person to do, and none of them required like a lot of finance, a lot of infrastructure, just simple creative things that could grow your business, and that could help them do their business in a much better way. And that got us thinking somewhere. And one of those evenings where we were finalizing the script for the documentary, I got to speaking with Divyam and the team that you know let's just call these guys, instead of vendors, let's just give a perspective that these guys are also entrepreneurs, because they are also managing their supplies. They're dealing with vendors who provide them with all their uh, raw material, or let's say fruits and vegetables that they have to sell. They're managing finances. They're also, a few street vendors are also having their team, so they're also doing HR in a way. So they were, and some of them also had solar panels, so they were also thinking about tech. And whatever you would assume that a corporate organization would have, the entire organization structure, or the kind of functions that they have, if we try to replicate something like that on the bottom of the pyramid, that is street vendors, how could that entire picture of our streets change? How could our local infrastructure become much better? And that got us started working for them. So 2.5 years I think 2 years we spent on validating different models. We definitely didn't want to do charity with street vendors, that we would give them, let's say, better design, better branding, better reach to their customers, better communication, just as a donation. We didn't want that to happen, because an entrepreneur doesn't think like that, or an entrepreneur doesn't operate like that. Uh, they are not complacent, so they don't depend on government policies or NGOs to support and help them. An entrepreneur acts based on what the government policy is, based on what the environment is, right? They take decisions, and there's nothing like um, there's nothing like like things being given to them for support. So we didn't want that to happen from day one. So we were trying to figure out ways in which we don't give all we want the street vendors to shift to these street entrepreneur kind of operating structures,
Okay.
but we don't want to this to be given to them for nothing, or for like as a donation from some, let's say, CSR of some company donating it to them. We didn't want that to happen, so we tried to figure out a revenue model around it. And I think after 2 years of struggling and speaking with a lot of street vendors, after the documentary, we so that documentary part we won, and we were also incubated by an organization in the university itself, which also helped us to great extents. And we started a survey, and we went and spoke to close to 400 street vendors across the country. So we spoke to street vendors in Tripura as well, and we spoke to street vendors down south in Kerala, as well as Gujarat, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, a lot of those, and across geographies. And we figured out what are their issues. So till that day we were thinking that bribes was the biggest issue that street vendors have to pay, because they're unorganized, because they don't have a space. But bribes was none of the, it wasn't even there in the top 5 of the issues that they had. And the rest of the issues that came up, we figured out that those issues could be solved entrepreneurially. As in, we had solutions to those. We just have to somehow organize this unorganized community. So there are close to 10 million street vendors in the country,
All right.
as per the data of the government. But I'm assuming it'll be much more, because there's no census done of the
Yeah, because
street.
there are many who are not registered or have been recognized by the government.
So we also did a lot of research based on why a person takes to street vending, what is their mentality like, why do they make certain decisions uh, the way they do, right? And we figured out that a lot of street vendors, majority of them, 70 to 80% of them, were street vendors because they didn't want to. They wanted that freedom of that entrepreneurship brings to them, but because of poor education, because of poor or no education, they weren't actually growing uh, what they could have grown into. So they were doing the same thing for the next 10 years, 50 years, and carrying it from their ancestors, and just continuing the same way, and they weren't thinking of how we could make this whole system better. So there was no rocket science into what we were doing. If I have to break that down into 3 simple things that we started doing with the street vendors, the first one was that we cut down their costs. So we helped them source their raw materials, their supplies at almost 40% of the cost that they were procuring at, by just collecting all the street vendors together and purchasing those in wholesale. Second was that we gave them a brand or an identity, right? So a lot of street vendors were working just with empty stalls, or some random names which the fabricator only put it for them and gave it to them, and they never bothered to change that, and they never bothered to give it an identity, because a street vendor in general won't understand branding as a marketing concept that helps your product, that helps you gain your customers trust. and we came up with our own brand, which for sweet corn vendors whom we started with, which was called Corn Okay Please, and we designed their entire stalls in a way that it would look really appealing and would stand out from the rest and would stand out from what they were before. So that would bring a lot of customer trust and, in a way, dignity to them. So this was the second factor that we were working on, which was dignity. So they were doing their business, but now with all this branding and with a proper infrastructure, a very low budget activity, but which could make their stalls a little clean, which could have a little branding on them, which could give them a t-shirt and a cap so that they also feel belong to the brand, would get a lot of customer trust, as well as customers start respecting them for that. So dignity is the second thing that we did for them, and third was increasing the sales. So we listed those street vendors on social media, and we started doing a lot of customization, brand customization, depending on where the street vendor was. So this was one of the USPs that street vendors. Sorry, I'll do that part again. So this was one of the USPs that the street vendors were that they have, right? Which they couldn't realize all this while. But when we were working with them, we realized that their ability to localize, because who is their competition? It's big brands like, let's say, Big Basket Grocers, who are delivering the same things, or Zomato for that say, who are delivering things at home, and they have the technology background, they have the finance background, that they could afford all that infrastructure to make home deliveries possible, to make an app and everything possible. But these street vendors didn't have that, right? So, but their biggest USP was their ability to localize. All these national level corporations, they have to standardize their products, right? But these street vendors, they can localize their product because they only have to service the locality that is around them. Let's say 200 300 meters around them, that's all that they have to service, right? And they could localize their brand in a way that could get them maximum business from their surrounding areas. So so the first street vendor that we were working with, he was right outside Christ University, and since it made
Okay.
stuff easier for us to coordinate as well, we started with him. And what we did was we identified his customer, which was 90% was the student crowd that he had, and coming from Christ University. So what we did for them was that all his menu items, which you can check on the social media page of Corn OK
Okay.
Please, which was earlier like butter corn and plain corn and masala corn and Mexican corn. We completely changed that. We got many more new flavors from the new supplier that we got on board, and they were delivering us not only unique flavors, but even tastier ones. And those we renamed and we rebranded as, let's say, management masala corn, LLB lime and pepper corn. So we put department names to those because the major audience was students, right? For him, for that one
Yeah.
particular vendor.
So it attracts them more.
Yeah, and we made it Mexican. So Mexican corn was converted into media Mexican corn, or media studies corn. And so we put all the university courses and converted or synced those to names of the corn products, and we put those out. And with the new branding, with the new menu names, with Devraj Bhaiya, who was the first vendor, with a t-shirt, with a cap, and with all that swag, he was doing really good. We did a launch for him, we did marketing within that college. We completely localized him as an identity to the place where he was operating from. And his audience is only that. Nobody is going to come from, let's say, even a different area, let's say Kormangla, to have
Yeah.
his corn. His corn has to be consumed by the audience which is within 300 meters radius. So that's what worked really well for him, and that's when we realized that there are certain set of USPs which, if played correctly with, could help them do their business much more better. And it helped beautify the local infrastructure. Like, you won't like walking on the streets, and as a lot of youngsters keep cribbing about our country, right? This is not right. Those wires are like spread across here. The roads are broken. There's no infrastructure. Everything. This could be a way to beautify those infrastructure, that infrastructure one by one, wherein we're
True.
organizing stuff that's unorganized. So we're bringing street vendors together. We're giving them a brand identity to work with. We're cutting down their costs. We're increasing the sales. This all leads to the street vendor being much more happy because he's making more and he's doing his business with much more dignity and respect. And that completely changed the way he was interacting with his customers, and he was much more happy. He was having much more personal conversations with his customers, and his audience or his customers really felt like they belonged to him. So there was a friendship that developed between the street vendor, or let's say the street entrepreneur, and his customers, and that actually changed his life. And we were really amazed by how that all worked out, and we want to scale this up, but we just a little taken on the backside because of the COVID situation, and they
Yeah.
they're struggling a bit to, because there's
Yeah.
zero sales.
That is that is where I would want to come next, as to since I've addressed so much about these street vendors and street entrepreneurs. My last question to you would be about the current situation, and we know that these street vendors work on the ground and they interact with different persons altogether, and that is their job basically. They depend on these daily customers to come and buy products from them, and that is their entire sales and profit margin. The more number of customers, the more number of profit they have. So, in that way, this lockdown has, of course, affected these street vendors, especially because they have to be inside their homes where they can't. For people like us, we have the choice to work from home. But for people like them who depend on going outside and selling their product on the street, on the ground level, with close proximity with people, they they have somehow been restricted. And of course, it is for their safety. But on the other hand, where do you see their business going maybe in this year, or because this year has almost ended, and in the next year with all this pandemic going on and all the restrictions going on, because it is also for their safety that they should stay home. So, do you have any kind of an idea, any kind of a thought in mind that would be innovative and in a way helpful for them, which will allow them to be safe but also continue with their business? Or just give us a very brief outlook as to how this situation has taken a toll on our street vendors, and what do you see the future holds for them?
So, one of the major challenges when we started, also, we realized that is the infrastructure, right? We weren't aware that a year back that something like Corona would happen, but we were always
Of course.
preparing for it in a different way, that we would that that revolved around the Street Vendors Protection Act, which the government passed in 2014, and but hasn't been implemented yet. But that act lays down that the street vendors would be surveyed, and they would be given specific positions out of which they can work, and they would be moved from their original positions, from where they've been working for years, and some from even decades. And we realized that all of that might hit the street vendors, and there would be competition. There would be a limit on the number of street vendors who would be working from a specific place, or and certain street vendors would be pushed out of business. So we we were preparing for that, though it hasn't been implemented yet. There's certain loopholes in that, but that same the need or the urgency for an infrastructure to support the street vendors has immediately come up because of the COVID situation. And all our vendors are out of business clearly, and there's a lot to be done on the tech front, which is enabling these street vendors with the kind of mechanism that would enable them to uh, maybe deliver their products at home, to maybe ensure quality standards, uh, maybe an app interface, which a few other people in Bangalore are also working for, and we
Okay.
soon expect that to we would expect that to happen as fast as possible, because the street vendors, their revenue model works like today whatever I've earned is consumed the very next day. So they don't have, or they don't come from a place where they have a lot of savings, and so they're in that position, and sustaining without business for such a long duration is really difficult. So there are certain things that the street vendors also will have to now adopt to. Like when demonetization happened, we saw a lot of street vendors completely shift to Paytm and PhonePe, wherein before that you wouldn't have even seen a single street vendor with all those things, but they had to. So I think that's what even COVID will push them to, is to make sure that they are ensuring high safety, hygiene, uh, and precautionary ways of operating their business, how they can make their operations more contactless, which we also even made for the con vendors that we were working with. We kind of made their operations more contactless, but right now I think it's the paranoia that people are not willing to go out of their homes as much, especially colleges have been shut. So street vendors who were completely dependent on student population as their customers, they have been struggling really bad, and they aren't even able to go to a better place, let's say a mall or an enclosed structure, because the kind of rents that they have to pay there is very high. So I think on the infrastructure front, uh, uh, maybe it could be private partners or public or government partners, that government partnership model that we have to look at, wherein we could build that infrastructure a little sooner than it might actually happen, and give the street vendors specific vending zones wherein they can operate from, wherein they don't have to worry about being extorted and being charged bribes and stuff like that, and they have a solid protection from weather changes as well. So most of these street vendors, they don't have like a solid roof, right? It's just a temporary structure that they operate from. So I think those are the things that we have to look at. How can that infrastructure come in? And once that infrastructure is there, obviously parallelly tech has to also jump in. So a few companies are working for an app which could locate all street vendors, and which could list down their products, give them ratings, and also the supply chain for these street vendors. So this, I mean, as an industry, the cheap retail sector industry has a lot of scope. So if people are willing to explore into entrepreneurship, I think this is a fantastic space to be in, because one, the kind of scope there is, second, the kind of exposure and the kind of validation that you receive from the street vendors, because you're not just making revenue here, you're changing someone's life completely. And the street vendors whom we have worked with, believe me, they don't forget you ever, and they worship you, because you've suddenly appeared from somewhere, and you've done something better in their life, something that they had been struggling
They
with.
have that feeling of gratitude in them.
Exactly, exactly. So I think that kind of satisfaction is really great working for this our street vendor community, and the kind of growth you can see in them is amazing. It just fuels you even more to keep going and to keep pursuing this, and helping the street vendors, and in a way that it's not a charity model, it's a revenue model for you as well to sustain. So it's a fantastic space for entrepreneurship currently. And there's a lot of scope in tech, in infrastructure, in supply, in marketing, as well as even finance. So a lot of people are also crowdfunding and making models which would crowdfund for street vendors. So I think you pick any of the streams that fall under your interest area. There's enough scope for you to do this.
Okay, so Chirag, I would thank you so much for giving us and our viewers a lot of insight into entrepreneurship, primarily into street vendors and how their condition can be, developed by making them accessible to all these new resources, new technology, new infrastructure that people like us have access to, but they unfortunately don't. And that it just takes the courage to make hard choices in your life and then just stick to it and believe in it to reach a certain goal or to achieve a certain goal that you have set for yourself. I believe all our viewers who are from a background that pushes them towards entrepreneurship or are interested to take up entrepreneurship or and become a successful entrepreneurs in the near future, they will learn a lot from you, and they will learn different ideas and how to project those ideas and how to make those ideas become a dream come true for people. Like in your case, you have made it true for these street vendors, and you have given them a platform, you have given them a niche for themselves where they stand unique out in the crowd. So I can't thank you enough for even letting me know about all this work that you have been doing. And it is wonderful that you gave us time being in another city where you have your own work, where you have your own schedule to follow. Urban Youth and Team People Assam, we thank you a lot for being a guest on our third episode of Let's Be Frank. And to be true, you have been very frank about your own journey, your own work, Matar Media, street-o-preneurs. So we wish you all the best in the future that has to come, and we hope that once everything normalizes and once this pandemic is far gone, we can somehow have a one-on-one interaction and not through a laptop screen, and we can feature your work with the street vendors with Matter Media, and so that our viewers get to know you more, know the work that I've been doing more, and get such wonderful ideas. So I would like to thank you a lot, and all the best, and hope we meet soon. And please stay safe and stay home.
Looking forward to it, Biprajit, and it was a pleasure to speak to you. And I've been following what the work of the people Assam, and it's amazing. I'm glad to be a part of this. And as you said, let's meet up soon, and let's see. I'd be glad to share more of our stories and going deeper with what we've been doing. And maybe if we could get that kind of maybe if your viewers are interested in it, we could dive deeper into it, and we could see how we could make the street vendors living a much better thing. And we can see what all opportunities we could explore.
We would love to. I'm sure our viewers would love to. We will try to, put the link in the description for the street vendor page that you've created on social media so that they can get a first-hand look onto what the work has been like, and they get a better picture of these street-o-preneurs that you have helped and given a very wonderful platform for them to cater to their customers and increase their sales. So now it's time to say goodbye, but we hope that we meet again, and we can discuss about a lot more things that we could not discuss due to our time constraints. So thank you so much, Chirag, and all the best, and hope to see you soon.
See ya. Keep safe.